Hey, it feels different, right?
Hello and welcome to the third episode of season 3. Today I'm going to be getting into some NBA. Clearly there was a lot going on this week. If you were able to watch, and follow free agency, there was a lot of signings. There's going to be a lot of moves, obviously, with Damian Lillard requesting a trade. Chris Paul just went to the Warriors. No one knows what's going to happen with that. There's just a lot on the floor right now, and even when James Harden recently came out that he might even stay with the 76ers after all is said and done. But I have some, teams here. This might be a long one, might be a short one, depends on how long I take to talk about each team, what I really want to say. But I did grade a majority of these team signings, and I tracked down every single person they signed, even the little moves. But I just wanted to make sure that I followed this very closely, as I am very interested in this upcoming season. And I do think that this free agency was a little letdown. I was very excited to see people on the move. I felt like a majority of the people either re-signed or just stayed. There wasn't anything that really shook my world other than the trades that happened prior to free agency. But yeah, I mean, still a lot of teams got better, a lot of teams got worse. So I'm just going to go head down and start with the Milwaukee Bucks. I gave the Milwaukee Bucks an A+. I couldn't really decide because they didn't do a lot, but they didn't not do anything. They got back Middleton, Lopez, Jay Crowder, but they re-signed Malik Beasley, or they wound up getting Malik Beasley. Obviously, they really wanted to bring back Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton. That was the biggest focus. They took Chris Middleton's $40 million player option. He probably realized that he should go for a team-friendly contract. I refuse to believe that. That's not why he declined it. Obviously, he signed a 3-year, $100 million deal. So it's less annually that he'd earn if he just accepted his player option. Keeping Crowder and bringing in Beasley for pretty much a veteran minimum. He provides shooting, and at the end of the day, he's one of those players that gets hot, and he's one of those players that you would love to have in like a playoff scenario if he's playing good this season. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Having Robin Lopez on that team with his brother is just great. But I gave it an A+ because they maintained what they had, and I think they had a championship level team last year. They just unfortunately lost in the first round. For the Phoenix Suns, I gave them an A, but I don't love their team. I still think they signed a lot of major depth, so that's why I gave them an A, because they did a lot with a little. Obviously, they have these struggles with the cap, and I think the way they worked around them was extremely good. That's why I gave them an A, just because, obviously, if this was any other team and they just signed these players, I would be like, that kind of sucks. But they signed Eric Gordon, Yuta Watanabe, Keita Beta-Diop, Drew Eubanks, Josh Okogie, Damian Lee, and Chimezie Mutu. They had major depth issues, like I said, after trading for Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, but they re-signed a lot of players. Gordon, Watanabe, they're going to play a lot. They're great three-point shooters. Obviously, Eubanks is a solid backup center, and Okogie and Lee played very well for them last year. So I'm really liking what they have with the starting five, along with some of the bench players they have. And I always say this, at the end of the day, all you need is 5 players and a 6-man. And I feel like that's what they got right now. So I'm really liking what they have on the team. Obviously, Bates Diop, in my opinion, could be one of the most valuable signings if he winds up playing up to his potential. He shot about 40% from 3 last year, and if he winds up shooting that again, they'll have some really good three-point shooters coming off the bench. My next team is the Golden State Warriors. I gave them just an A. They only really made 2 moves. They signed Draymond Green and Corey Joseph. I thought it was great paying up for Draymond Green. A lot of people don't think he deserved that $100 million. At the end of the day, Draymond Green is one of the most important players on the Warriors. Obviously losing Dante DiVincenzo in this free agency for them hurts. But they got Corey Joseph. He's a 12-year veteran. He's a catch and shoot guy. He'll fit in right there. I think the only reason I gave them an A- is because they lost Dante DiVincenzo. Dante DiVincenzo is good, but at the end of the day, it opens up floor for Kuminga to play more, and Kuminga could wind up taking that spot and dancing with it. I like what he has done in the past couple seasons with his development. I think at this point, Moody's kind of a lost cause. They don't play him enough. He's not fitting in with the guard position. Unless they want to replace Poole with Moody, I don't see an offensive position in which Moody fits into this Warriors team. But I like what they did. Draymond they need to pay up for. I think people underrate how important he is to that team, but like I said, very good signings. For the Timberwolves, I gave them an A minus, B plus, or B plus A minus. They re-signed Anthony Edwards to an enormous deal, which was honestly well worth it. Obviously, he deserved the money. They gave him the maximum rookie extension, which I think is 5 years, $260 million. I mean, he is just a star. I think he's going to be one of the best players next year. He's by far one of the best developmental players that I've seen in the past couple of years. Every year it seems as though he becomes better at something different. And I think that's one of the best traits about him. It's super interesting to see a player like him who started as a scorer develop into someone who could really just be one of those all-star, superstar players. Then they wound up signing Shake Milton, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Troy Brown. I thought they did great. I thought all three of those guys were, really good. I think Shake Milton is probably the best value signing at day one. He didn't really fit in with the Sixers, and obviously for only 2 years, $10 million, I think he could really wind up playing a role on this team who's missing, some scores. And then, for Brown and Alexander Walker, I mean, they'll be good off the bench, but I don't think they're, by far, crazy signings. For the Lakers, I gave them a B minus / B. I think people probably will have them higher, but here's the only reason I gave them a B minus, B plus. B. I think they probably overpaid. I think they overpaid for a lot of the players. I think Russell, Hachimura, and Vincent all got paydays that they maybe didn't deserve. But obviously, I think the problem at this point is LeBron's getting to that age, and it really comes down to, do they want to keep this team intact? I think Reeves was a great signing for 4 years, $56 million. I mean, that's pretty much $15 million a year. He played absolutely fantastic in the second half of the season. And if he continues to do that and get better in the second year of his contract, it'll be way too low. Obviously, the lower end signings were good. Hayes, he busted on the Pelicans, but he could be really great. Prince, good veteran who could shoot the ball very well. I really like Jackson Hayes and Rui Hachimura staying on this team. Rui Hachimura staying on this team and Jackson Hayes getting signed. I think Jackson Hayes, at the end of the day, could wind up potentially being someone that's useful. He got no playing time on the Pelicans, and I thought that was just a waste of talent. He was a pretty good stud on Texas, so, just to see him be able to do something would be really interesting. I think Gabe Vincent's also a really interesting signing. I know, for example, he was an extremely good player on the Heat. I just don't think he's going to come over to the Lakers and do what he did on the Heat. I don't think they're going to use him right. I don't think he's going to play as much as he did on the Heat, and I don't think he's going to get as many opportunities. At the end of the day, you think of a lineup and you think of playoffs, I think it's just going to be between Russell and Vincent, whoever's playing good. And if Russell can really turn it around, I think it'd be extremely well for them. But the reason I gave them a B minus B, and this is the biggest reason I wrote in, all caps, they didn't get better. I don't think they got better. They obviously made it to the Western Conference Finals, and they got swept. And to pretty much not do anything to get better, you could argue getting Gabe Vincent and Cam Reddish is getting better, but that'd be a really big stretch. So, say what you want about the Lakers. I thought it was a pretty mediocre offseason for them. Honestly, I really wanted to give them a C, but it's just they did do all right stuff with the money, and they, re-signed players. But yeah, they didn't get any better. My next is for the Pacers. They signed Bruce Brown. They got him to a 2-year, $45 million deal. I don't think it was an overpay. I think a lot of people were saying he was a role player. I think he's absolutely a stud. He was a stud on the Nets, and then he went to the Nuggets, and he was even more of a stud. And I think at one point when he just gets the offense in his hands, he's going to flourish. Obviously, they gave Tyrese Halliburton $280 million over the next 5 seasons. He needed that maximum extension. It was just eventually going to hit him, and I think the way the Pacers handled it was very, very good. I didn't add signings for Obi Toppin, but they gave 2 second-round picks for him, and Obi Toppin I really do think is one of the better players in the league when it comes down to what he does on offense when he's given a role. I don't think he found a role on New York, but when he played and he played his heart out, I really saw the potential he had. And I know it sounds stupid to say that a player wouldn't fit on a team he was drafted to, but when Obi Toppin got drafted, the first thing I said is he was not going to fit on that team with that coach. It just made no sense. They picked a power forward with already having a power forward, and he wasn't ever going to be a 3 guy, and it made no sense. It was a stupid pick. I don't understand the pick. To this day, I'll never understand the pick, and I think he'd never fit for the Knicks, but I'm really interested to see what he can do on the Pacers, have they give him a role, especially with, what's his name, Jalen Smith, I think it is. I don't think they're going to play Jalen Smith anymore. I think he's a lost cause, a power forward. I think they're going to start Obi Toppin. For the Boston Celtics, I gave them a B plus just because they got O'Shea Brissett and they re-signed Kristaps Porzingis to a contract. I really liked that move. I thought both those moves were pretty solid, very interesting. To keep Porzingis for a long term. And O'Shea Brissett on the Pacers, absolute dog in fantasy basketball. He's a gritty player, gave great energy on defense, absolute stud on the board, so I like that. For the Nets, I gave him an A minus. They took Cameron Johnson, who they traded for, kept him for a bunch of years, 4-year, $108 million, but he's a dog. They wound up getting Lonnie Walker and Dennis Smith. I think they're cheap players who could eventually, they could serve a role on an offense that other players wouldn't for how much they're paying them. They're paying them pretty much nothing. I love Walker's scoring. Smith has become an elite point of attack defender as well with his playmaking, so I really like it. For the Mavericks, I gave them an A just because they kept Kyrie, and I know people hated the fact that they hated Kyrie didn't leave. I hated it. I was extremely upset that he didn't leave. For one, I was extremely pissed that no one made a move for him. I wanted the Suns or the Lakers to make a move for him so bad. But signing him back and getting Seth Curry is extremely impressive. So I really much like that. For the Cavaliers, I gave them an F. And people aren't going to agree with this. I thought the signing of Max Strus was stupid. They paid him pretty much $16 million a year. Makes no sense. Georges Niang, I can't stand him. Karis LeVert, not a good player on that team at least. And Ty Jerome, he's a nobody. I mean, Karis LeVert has not been good on Cleveland. He's been good in his career, but he hasn't been good on Cleveland. I don't like any of their signings. I don't like any of their players on the team. No, that's not what I meant. I just really cannot stand the fact that they have stayed with Isaac Okoro for so long. I don't understand it, and I don't think I'll ever understand it. I really was hoping they would do a sign and trade with Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, and like 3 first-round picks to get literally any forward possible, like anyone. I don't care if it was Paul George. I don't care if anyone. I cannot stand how bad Isaac Okoro is. He is useless on that basketball court, and they did nothing to change the team that they had last year after getting bounced in the first round. We can talk quickly about my Toronto Raptors. I gave them, personally, I gave them an F. But realistically, for what they did, I gave them a C+. And they signed Dennis Schroeder, who's pretty good. I don't think he's a great fit. I think he's a good player. And I think they probably overpaid for him too. I don't think he deserved $13 million a year. Jakob Poeltl, I think he's pretty solid. I think he's a good player. I don't know if I like him at $20 million a year, but I do like him as a player. And then Jalen McDaniels is Jalen McDaniels. I mean, he's the type of player that Masai Ujiri loves. I mean, he's a long player that can play defense, and he can't play offense. So that's if you want to go on the Raptors, no offense, all defense makes perfect sense. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, losing Fred VanVleet was really a hard hit for me. He was one of my favorite players, and I really wanted them to get rid of Pascal. Just because I don't think he fits anymore. I know he's a good player. I think we need to move Scotty to that 4, put OG at the 3, keep whatever his name at the 1, and then I wanted Gary Trent to start maybe developing a little more. And then I thought we would put Jakob Poeltl at the center with getting rid of Pascal, and then maybe have like a little 6-man signing going on. But we didn't do any of that. We didn't trade for anyone. We got nothing in return. We did absolutely nothing this offseason. Just classic by us to absolutely do nothing for 6 years straight, pretty much. But we won a championship. For the Los Angeles Clippers, I gave them A. I really liked what they did. They signed back Westbrook on pretty much nothing. They traded for KJ Martin, and they signed Mason Plumlee. I thought all those were good players, and I think if they're healthy next year, they're going to wind up bringing it to the Western Conference Finals if they are healthy. If everyone's healthy, if they're all playing, if you have Russell out there, if you have Zubac out there, you have Kawhi, and you have Paul George, you have Mann, or whoever's running the 2, I guarantee you they'll make it to Western Conference Finals. Yeah, I don't really have anything else that would, stand out. I wrote a couple things, but I don't know. We can talk about the Hornets. Yeah, let's talk about the Hornets, the Sixers, and the Heat. We'll close it out with that. Hornets, I gave them an A. I know a lot of people don't like this. Obviously they had the ability to create cap space, but they didn't do much. They gave Ball his 5-year, $260 million maximum extension. But honestly, LaMelo is one of those players you just got to pay. And Bridges will come back on a $8 million qualifying offer and enter unrestricted free agency next summer. I think the thing about Bridges playing, if he plays, I don't really know what a qualifying offer is, but from what I gathered when I looked it up, he will play next year. But I don't think that. I think that means the season after that they don't want to re-sign him, is what I kind of gathered from that. Or just they want to see how he plays. I think with LaMelo, Terry, Miles, Brandon, and whoever they have run the 5 now, with the rookie they drafted last year, I think they could be a really solid team. Again, I don't think they're going to be a winning team. Just depends on how they play and who stays healthy. Another thing about them that I really wanted them to do, I wanted them to re-sign Kelly Oubre. No one signed Kelly Oubre, by the way. I think Kelly Oubre is one of those players that no one likes because he's useless. But I really like Kelly Oubre because he's lefty and he can dress well. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think someone needs Kelly. But yeah, I like the Hornets. I gave them a pretty solid grade, and I think that's what they deserved. 76ers, I gave them an F. They lost Niang walkout, McDaniels walked out, Shake walked out. They got Patrick Beverly, who I think is one of the worst players in the league. Obviously, he played well on the Bulls. If you think he played well, he's a terrible shooter. He really is just an offensive liability, and he can play defense, but at the end of the day, offense always will beat defense, especially in this league nowadays. And they just can't put enough shooting threats around Joel Embiid, and they didn't. They let one of the best, efficient volume shooters get out of here. And the James Harden thing is a mess. It's just a mess. For the Miami Heat, right now, as of this moment, I have a D+, right? Obviously, they only signed Josh Richards. They re-signed Kevin Love, who's going to do absolutely nothing. He'll just be another Udonis Haslem. And they signed Thomas Bryant, right? So they got a better replacement. Cody Zeller's gone, which is great because he sucked and Thomas Bryant's good. I have the Houston Rockets here. I'm going to talk about them a little. And obviously, Josh Richardson's a guy who was on the Mavs. He's all right. But the biggest thing they're obviously going for is Damian Lillard. I don't know right now what the trade's looking like for him, the trade market I meant. I don't know what people have offered. I heard that the Nets offered Claxton, someone else, and a couple picks for him. But I don't know, man. I think Dame is, at the end of the day, he's just going to go there for Hero, Kyle Lowry, and some picks. I think that's what the trade's going to be, and they're going to wind up cutting Kyle Lowry. But I don't know. I mean, this whole offseason, I mean, it's boiling down to that, or they keep him, and I don't know which one's going to happen. So, as I said, C, or D+, sorry. For the Houston Rockets, I gave them an A, right? A lot of people, I gave the Hawks, I'm sorry, I wrote down everything for every team, but some of these are just, they're too you don't want to hear about them. The Hawks, I gave an F. I mean, they got rid of John Collins, but they literally did nothing. I mean, they quite literally did absolutely nothing in the offseason after doing pretty bad last year. But for the Houston Rockets, I gave him an A. Fred VanVleet, I think he's extremely good. I think he's one of the better players in the league. I really think people underestimate how good Fred VanVleet is just because of how bad the Raptors have been recently. He's one of those players who does it on defense and it's not realized enough. At the end of the day, he was a very poor shooter last year. But I say it like this, and I said this to my friends, right? You look at Fred VanVleet, right? And you look at that team. They were 28th in offensive efficiency last year. I just know that off the top of my head. They sucked last year when it came to offense. And you have a player like Scotty Barnes, who had a career, where his second year he had a sophomore slump. Player like OG, who just couldn't really get it going on offense. And then you have Fred and, Pascal. Two players got to shoot. I mean, people got to shoot on the team. You got to score. You got to put up points. So Fred VanVleet, was out there putting up 16-plus shots a night. And, obviously, it wasn't going to be he would have had an MVP season if he was shooting 45% because he would have been averaging 30 if he was making everything. With that said, obviously he is a little bit of a three-point liability. He does shoot a little too many threes. He's not, last year especially he was not great on them. But I think he's a really, really good player. I think the Raptors had no way of replacing VanVleet. and they were trying to keep him, but they weren't willing to pay $130 million. And I think that's just why he wound up going to the Rockets. I think he's one of those players who wanted the money. I don't think he was happy where he was. I wouldn't have been happy where I was with the offense. And I really hope Fred VanVleet flourishes on the Houston Rockets, because I really like the Houston Rockets team. I've been a fan of the Rockets for a while now. I just love Kevin Porter Jr., and it's unfortunate because Fred VanVleet's probably going to replace him. But, at the end of the day, I do still like the Rockets. Dylan Brooks, another great signing. People hate Dylan Brooks because of last year. I think Dylan Brooks is one of those players that is underappreciated. A lot of people keep talking about how it's an overpay. He has erratic behavior. He creates problems. He's a perplexing player. I think at the end of the day, this is what it is. I think when Ime Udoka talks to him, I think it'll be a different player. I think it'll be different. Before this season, it wasn't like this. He continually got better. I'm pretty sure in his third year he averaged 17. His fourth year he averaged 18, and then last year, his fifth year, he had a career low in shooting and points. He's a great on-ball defender. He's not great at catch and shoot, but he was a really good scorer before last year. I think at the end of the day, if Ime can coach him up and he can get this mentality out of his head, or the way the media has gotten into him, I feel like he'll be a great signing for $20 million because he's still very young. Great defender, great offense or decent offensive scorer. And at the end of the day, that's just what it is. I mean, I really am impressed by what Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks can do. And if you look at a starting lineup with whatever you want to cut it, if it's Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks or Asar, Jabari Smith, and then Sengun, and you want to take Asar or Dylan Brooks off the bench, that's a good 6. I would take that 6 any day. I mean, I know it's hard to say that like they're a good 6 over other people, but if they could all play how they're supposed to play, it's a great 6 because they all have shown that extremely good talent in games. They just can't all put it together. So I think if Ime can coach him up, fix his team, you got a veteran leader in Fred. You got a player that Dylan Brooks who's been there, great defender. You got offense in Jalen Green. You got offense in Fred, and you got the defense in Jabari, and you got the playmaking ability and the 5 ability in Sengun. I think it'll be something interesting to watch. But yeah, extremely impressive this season. I'm very excited for what's to happen, and I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you guys really liked my grades. If any of you disagree with them, I want you to let me know in the comments. I really did put some time into this just because I was extremely excited for the offseason. And in my opinion, like I said, it let me down. Just not a lot that I really thought was going to happened. And, not that I like to be right, but obviously I hope to be, right on some things. But the main things that I was trying to call, like absolutely nothing happened. Everyone pretty much re-signed. No one went somewhere that I didn't expect them to go. I mean, there was no signing that really shocked me. I really thought John Collins was going to get traded, so I guess I was right about that. I didn't think he was going to get traded to the Jazz, but I mean, hey, I was right that he's going to get traded. But yeah, like I said, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you want me to do for my 4th podcast. I'm really trying to think about it right now. Obviously, MLB is still going on. I'm thinking about talking about some fantasy football just as season's starting or season's about to start and drafts are coming up and stuff. And I want to, head in and talk about what I'm liking for the season, what I'm not liking. So, as always, I appreciate you guys watching and tune in next week. Thank you.